China has locked down parts of its central metropolis of Xi'an. This has confined some of the city's 13 million people to their homes for at least a week. This has once again brought China's zero-COVID policy back into focus. China never allowed the stringent lockdowns to stop. Now, at the moment, COVID curbs are intact in at least 3 Chinese provinces, with normal life disrupted in major cities like Xi'an, Hefei, Zhengzhou, and Shanghai. Outbreaks in some parts of China have been reported almost every week ever since the virus first emerged. Hard-hitting restrictions and lockdowns followed the same. But the approach has come at a great economic cost to China, as the economic activity in regions locked down come to a standstill. Now, official youth unemployment in China stands at 18.7%. Earlier this year, it was nudging 20%. Moreover, the implementation of the zero-COVID policy itself comes at a huge cost. Experts say that regular mass testing, as is mandated in the zero-COVID strategy, would cost nearly $100 billion per year if 900 million people were tested every 3 days. Japanese bank Nomura said that testing every 48 hours on a permanent basis would cost up to 1.8% of China's GDP. But the Chinese establishment shows no signs of backing down on its zero-COVID policy. Neither have outbreaks ceased in China. But the question is why? Why have the COVID outbreaks continued in China? To explore the answer, first, let's get you the numbers. As of August 2022, China has fully vaccinated close to 90% of its total population. That means over 1.2 billion Chinese people have taken 2 shots of the COVID vaccine. Moreover, people who had received a booster shot exceeded 821 million in China. But late in September, Chinese administration was still urging its citizens to get a second booster shot, saying that a well-timed 4th dose was necessary for a safe long-term exit from the pandemic. This brings us to our next question, which revolves around the efficacy of Chinese vaccines. If more than 90% of the population is fully vaccinated, why does China continue to report COVID outbreaks every now and then? The continuation of COVID curbs lays bare China's lack of trust in its own vaccines. And it's not just us who's questioning the efficacy of Chinese vaccines. The countries where China exported its vaccines have also expressed concerns over its efficacy. In May of 2021, fears against the efficacy of China's Sinopharm vaccine rose in the UAE, where COVID cases remained high even after inoculation. UAE mostly used the Sinopharm vaccine in its inoculation program. Other countries relying on Chinese vaccines, including Chile, Brazil, and the Seychelles, have voiced concerns after infection rates remain high despite the vaccination campaigns. Even the World Health Organization seemed hesitant to approve these vaccines. While approving China's Sinopharm vaccine, the WHO highlighted very low confidence in data provided by the company on the risk of serious side effects in older patients. Among other gaps in evidence, nonetheless, the WHO reported it was 78% effective. Now, another Chinese vaccine that Beijing has relied on to inoculate its citizens, the Sinovac vaccine, turned out to be only 50% effective. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Professor Amos Panet, who is a virologist at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Thank you for being with us, Professor. Now, why has China not been able to handle its COVID outbreak?
Well, firstly, as you noted, they developed their own vaccine, which was based on a very traditional method of preparing vaccines, using a system where you grow the virus and then inactivate the virus, similar to what we do for the polio vaccine and other vaccines which have been developed years ago. And it turns out that the vaccine is only partially effective. It protected about 50% of the vaccinee, whereas the messenger RNA vaccine protected 95%. So it was hugely different. Then, for a long time, they refused to purchase the RNA vaccine from the West. It was suggested back a year ago, more than a year ago, that they get from Pfizer or Moderna the RNA vaccine, which have been used all over the world. So they continue to use their own vaccines. So that's one problem. Second problem is that they haven't done booster vaccination for a large proportion of the population, especially old people. Very few have gotten the booster, the third vaccine, which is a must. It's the most effective against the disease, against a serious disease. And with that situation, they are now standing. They are developing their own RNA vaccine now, and it's in clinical trials already, in very advanced clinical trials. And the likelihood that they will have very soon their own RNA vaccine. But until then, they are keeping the population under very strict isolation and quarantine. And once they will have the third booster vaccine, probably the situation will be better. However, the RNA vaccines do not stop completely infection. They stop serious disease. So they protect the population against serious disease. And that's, of course, a big help, right, because hospitals are not overwhelmed.
Yes. Now, Professor, on this, do you think that China's zero COVID policy has done more harm than good then?
Well, certainly for their economy and for the freedom of the populations, they have done more harm. But they were afraid of overwhelming the hospitals with serious cases. You know, we remember the year 2000 around the world where hospitals were overwhelmed, couldn't cope with a number of severely diseased patients. So in order to avoid this situation, they introduced this isolation, very strict isolation and quarantines. But in my mind, they made a mistake not taking the RNA vaccine early on from companies that produce it. Also in India, the RNA vaccine was produced in large amounts, and most populations in India got a third vaccination with the RNA vaccine.
So thank you very much for your valued insights, bringing us the latest on China's COVID policy.
Thank you, and thanks the audience and viewers in India from Jerusalem.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.